As you know, this is a midterm election year, and of course, this one has been pretty contentious, a tough pill to swallow quite frequently, and one of the toughest races is for United States Senate. And we've heard from the Democrats a couple of times now in recent weeks, so we're glad to finally hear from the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, Tiffany Smiley. Tiffany, thanks for joining us here at Northwest News Radio. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, well, I'm going to dive right in because the big issue, obviously, in this election since the overturning of Roe is the abortion issue. You have said you are 100% pro-life, but I just want to clarify where you stand on exceptions if we're talking about the life of the mother or rape or incest.
Yeah, so I addressed this issue in my campaign right away because I knew it was important. It's important to Washington voters. And long before the unprecedented Supreme Court leak came out, I was very clear and on the record that I oppose a federal abortion ban. I am personally pro-life, but look, there's good people on both sides of the aisle. My last job, I was an OBGYN triage nurse. So I have seen the heartbreak. I understand it. And I know what I can fight for is when women are at a point of crisis, I want them to have every resource that they need to make the best choice. And, you know, the Washington state voters long decided where they stand on the issue. So I respect the will of the voters here in Washington state, and again, oppose a federal abortion ban. I have been very clear about that. There is one extreme in this race on this issue, and that is Senator Murray, because if she had it her way, she would change Washington state law. She would want taxpayer funded abortion on demand all the way to the point of birth. And that is not where 81% of Americans are. I stand with 81% of Americans on this issue. And I think the question we should all be asking Senator Murray is, does she believe in any legal limitation to abortion? Her voting record says that she does not.
Okay, I understand and appreciate that answer, but it didn't actually answer the question that I was hoping to clarify, and that's where you stand on exceptions for rape, incest, or the life of the mother in danger.
Yeah, and I think there's other. And so I respect the will of the voters of Washington state. You know, something that I am deeply concerned about, Senator Murray sits on the HELP committee. She is chairwoman of HELP committee and did nothing about the baby formula crisis. I was talking to single parents all over Washington state who are driving around on, you know, almost $6 a gallon for gas, wondering how they were going to feed their babies. So all issues are important, but we have real issues that are deeply affecting Washington voters every single day, from the rising cost of food, baby formula shortage, gas prices going through the roof, crime is out of control, and we have a humanitarian crisis on our streets, not just in Seattle, but all over Washington state.
Okay, and I'm going to apologize because now I have to ask you a third time because my Zoom froze up there. So I just missed the first part of that answer there. I'm really sorry about that. On the exceptions.
So I'm saying, medical ethics, you will always protect the life of a mother. That is true across the board. And so I was just saying that I respect the will of the voters of Washington state. I will fight to ensure that women in Washington state have access, affordable, timely access to contraception, healthcare, childcare, and unlike Senator Murray, I will get it done.
Very good. I appreciate you doubling back on that for me. Thanks to we love these tech issues these days, don't we? So let me hit another one that's been kind of a point of contention for some people. And I'm going to ask it in a different way. How are you feeling right now about the integrity of our election system?
Look, people on both sides of the aisle have expressed concerns with the integrity of our elections. And it's not, it's an American issue. Hillary Clinton had issues with it. Stacey Abrams had issues with it. You know, Senator Murray, even, I believe it was the 2004 election, she had concerns and didn't want to certify the presidential election. So it's clear that it's a bipartisan issue. And I think the will of the voters needs to be listened to. If people have deep concerns, then we need to ensure that it is hard to cheat and easy to vote. And that's something I think that we can all agree on.
Well, with that in mind, what do you think about voting by mail? Because as you know, Washington State's been doing it for a long time. Kim
Washington
Wyman,
State-
a member of your party, ran those elections for a long time.
Washington State has been doing it for a long time. And look, I mean, I always tell everyone the worst thing you can do in this country is not vote. So we have to vote. And one thing that I want to be clear on is Senator Murray, if she had it her way, she would federalize elections. And I don't agree with that. I believe elections are best handled in this state. And that is the best way, closest to the people in the state, that those should be handled, that voting should be handled.
Absolutely. So you touched on another one that I definitely wanted to hit, and that's crime. Gun violence is especially pervasive. Where do you see the federal government's role in that, and what would you like to do if you make it into the Senate?
Yeah, I am deeply worried about the rising crime and drugs here in Washington State. You know, I've been listening to voters for over the last 17 months, hearing their concerns. 17 months ago, they were worried about the rising crime. Most recently, I think Seattle saw one of their, most homicides they've had in almost 30 years. Blood supply shortages were at extremely low levels in our hospitals. So our campaign put together a blood drive to help bolster the blood supply in the Seattle area. Unfortunately, Senator Murray went on the Senate floor June of 2020 and called for funds to be diverted away from our police force. And then she disappeared. And people have said to me, we didn't see her until she came out attacking you specifically. I think that's a really bad look for a politician, a career politician. She should be coming back and talking about everything she's delivered for us. So we need to, Patty Murray's been soft on crime. We can look at her voting record to see that. One thing that I think is super important is we cannot lift Title 42 unless we have a plan behind that. Our border is so porous, and there are guns and drugs and human trafficking happening at record alarming rates on our southern border. So we need to secure our border immediately. And then we also need to ensure that our police force has everything that they need, training, recruiting, everything they need to be the best that they can be. Right now we have crime increasing and not enough cops. So from a federal level, we can ensure that grants, $5,000 bonuses go to our police departments to recruit and retain good police officers. We need to keep ensure that we are keeping fentanyl off of our streets and drugs off of our streets to start to address these issues.
Okay, so you had mentioned guns that are coming through the border. With when we see these school shootings and other mass shootings, there's always calls for stricter gun regulations and limiting certain types of weapons, banning AR-15s and that sort of thing. What would you like to see happen to try to curb some of this gun violence?
Well, number one, we need to secure our border, and we need to keep illegal guns out of the hands of criminals. That is for sure. So we need to secure our border immediately. But when you look at it across the board, we need to go to the root issue. We have a massive mental health crisis in our country that those in Congress are failing to address. We need mental health reform. We need to ensure that our kids in school have access to mental health, to psychologists to help, especially in a time of need. And that is something I can work on in the Senate. That is I think the root cause, we need to address that immediately.
I wasn't going to ask you about this. It wasn't on my list, but you had mentioned Senator Murray going on the attack. And it feels like this particular race especially went negative pretty quickly. How do you feel about, as we continue this divide in our country and especially a partisan divide, everybody going so negative and so easily going to that place?
Yeah, I think it's a really bad look. I mean, look, people are suffering in Washington State. I mentioned our humanitarian crisis that we have with the homeless. It breaks my heart because it doesn't have to be that way. I was just talking with a woman who works in downtown Seattle, and on her lunch break, she was violently assaulted and pushed into a corner. And when she fought off the assailant, she looked around and she said, "Should I call 911?" And the person back to her said, "Why? They're not going to do anything." I mean, are we really at this level? in our country, like there's real problems. So I think it's a really bad look to go negative. Patty Murray's going negative on a family who has served and sacrificed greatly for our country. My husband lost his eyesight serving our country. He's never seen our 3 beautiful kids' faces. They were all born after he was blind. He'll never see them. And I, fought and was a voice for my husband when he didn't have one, took on the DOD, took on the Army, and then went back and took on the VA to make it right for everyone. I was fighting for every Democrat, every Republican, every independent service disabled veteran in their family, because it was the right thing to do. It is a difficult, typical bureaucratic red tape system that needed to be fixed for those who earned the care and services. And so I just think it's a really bad look for Senator Murray to come out attacking me specifically, like I'm extreme. And so I made it clear, I'm here to serve. Our family is here to serve. This is service over self. This is country over party. For us, we want to know in 10, 20 years that our 3 boys have a country worth losing their eyesight for. And when we look at Senator Murray's messaging, she always says she's fighting for the progressive Democrats, and she has all this messaging that's very divisive. I'm fighting for everyone in Washington state. And if our country cannot get back to that, then I don't know what our future holds, but that's certainly why our family's in this fight. And again, it's just a bad look for a 30-year incumbent. She should be able to come back and talk about everything she's delivered for us. Unfortunately, she can't. So she came out attacking me and trying to make me look extreme. I'm here to serve. Patty Murray's here to scare you.
Okay, so with 1 minute left, I want to make sure to ask you about how you feel about the federal government's role in education and where you would like to see improvements in education, keeping in mind it's got to be a quick answer.
Okay. Yes. As a mom of 3 young boys who were shuttered out of school for over a year and a half, we had the opportunity to look at the science and know that there was a point where it was safe for our kids to be back in school. Unfortunately, Patty Murray championed school closures and mandates, indicating that she didn't believe parents should have a choice in masking, but parents know their kids best. And we are seeing test scores that have plummeted and childhood anxiety on the rise. When asked about it on a CNN interview, if she has any regrets with how they handled the pandemic, she doubled down. She failed to side with the parents of Washington state. What I can do at the federal level is ensure that the money follows the child, that we fund the children, not the system, and ensure that our children are getting a competitive, quality education with a partnership with parents. We also need to decrease the stigma that college is for everyone, because there are multiple pathways in this country to the American dream. And we need kids exposed to trades at a much younger age. The infrastructure bill, that was great, but I'm talking to contractors all over Washington state who cannot fill those jobs, and their apprenticeship programs are sitting empty. So I look forward to filling those apprenticeship programs, ensuring kids in Washington state know that there's multiple pathways to the American dream. And we need to ban the federal government from ever paying off student loan debts, because the hairdresser, the electrician should not be paying for someone's psychology degree.
All right, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, Tiffany Smiley. Tiffany, thanks for joining us. Appreciate that.
Thank you.